How does a skinny white guy deemed too small and too slow become the NFL's all-time leader in every major receiving category? In an era of superstar athletes, one man proved that precision could beat pure talent as he retired with more catches, yards, and touchdowns than anyone in history. He was such a dominant wide receiver at one point that he even became Jerry Rice's idol. But Steve Largent's path to NFL immortality almost ended before it began, and his greatest obstacle wasn't on the football field. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, Steve Largent's childhood was far from the American dream. At just 6 years old, his father walked away, leaving behind a void that would shape his entire life. His mother, struggling to keep the family afloat, eventually remarried, but what should have been a fresh start turned into a nightmare. His new stepfather was an alcoholic and brought violence and fear into their home instead of stability. Night after night, Steve would cry himself to sleep, making a promise that would fuel his future. His own family would never know this kind of pain. With 3 younger siblings looking up to him, Largent took on responsibilities far beyond his years. While other kids his age were focused on playground games, he was helping care for his family, learning lessons in perseverance that would serve him well in the years to come.
When a child grows up without a father, a child can live in a shadow all their lives. But if someone takes that place, a child can escape the shadows.
In a way, sports became Largent's safety blanket, his escape from the chaos at home. At Putnam City High School in Oklahoma City, he found father figures and coaches who saw something special in the undersized kid with unshakable determination. On the football field and baseball diamond, Largent can temporarily forget about his troubles at home. But it was football where he truly found his calling. Though his 5'11", 190-pound frame didn't exactly scream future football star, still, despite putting up impressive numbers in high school, major college programs weren't exactly beating down his door. Largent's size and lack of elite speed had most recruiters looking elsewhere, but the University of Tulsa saw past the physical limitations, offering him a chance to play close to home. It was a decision that would alter the course of football history. Under offensive coordinator Jerry Rome, a man he would consider the closest thing to a father, Largent began developing the precision and work ethic that would become his trademark. His 3 years at Tulsa produced 136 catches, 2,385 yards, and 32 touchdowns. Largent had transformed from a troubled kid seeking escape into a record-setting receiver. But even as the accolades piled up, NFL scouts remained skeptical. They only saw the modest 40-yard dash times and unremarkable size. But what their stopwatches couldn't measure was his iron will. The question remained, could a receiver who didn't fit the traditional mold succeed at the highest level? Despite leading the nation in touchdown catches 2 straight years, Largent waited anxiously through 3 rounds of the 1976 NFL Draft before the Houston Oilers finally called his name in the 4th. The scouting report was always the same: too small, too slow. Even after proving himself at Tulsa, professional football seemed ready to write him off before he even had a chance. The Oilers' training camp quickly became a nightmare. After just 4 preseason games, Houston's coaching staff had seen enough. Largent was about to be cut. But head coach Bum Phillips ended up trading him to the Seahawks for an 8th-round pick. As Largent packed up his bags, it seemed his NFL dream might end before it truly began. Years later, Phillips would call it the worst decision of his coaching career. But fate had other plans. In Seattle, a new expansion franchise was preparing for their inaugural season, and they had someone in their corner who knew exactly what Largent could do. Jerry Rome, his first offensive coordinator at Tulsa, was now the Seahawks quarterbacks coach. Rome had witnessed firsthand how Largent's precise routes and reliable hands could transform an offense. Legend has it that he was the one who convinced Seattle's front office to trade for the receiver. Most likely, without Jerry Rome, there would be no Steve Largent. Even with Rome's support, Largent's first practice with Seattle was another uphill battle. Sleep-deprived, from 9 straight days of caring for his family while trying to sort out his professional future, he performed poorly. Once again, the specter of being cut loomed over him, but this time, something was different. The Seahawks saw past that rough first impression, recognizing the potential that Houston had missed. Rome's presence proved crucial in more ways than one. He implemented elements of Tulsa's passing game into Seattle's offense, creating an environment where the rookie receiver could thrive. In his first NFL season, Largent hauled in 54 catches, ranking 3rd in the entire NFC. He quickly formed a connection with quarterback Jim Zorn, showing the same sure hands and precise route running that made him a star in college. That rookie season proved what Largent had known all along. Size and speed weren't everything. His dedication to perfecting every aspect of his craft, from route running to catching technique, could overcome any physical limitations, not to mention his sheer intensity. The player Houston didn't want was quickly becoming the cornerstone of Seattle's passing attack, setting the stage for one of the most remarkable careers in NFL history. The expansion Seahawks' first season in the NFC was just a preview of what Largent would become. When Seattle shifted to the AFC the following year, Largent's star truly began to rise. His connection with quarterback Jim Zorn flourished as they formed one of the most prolific quarterback-receiver combinations of the era. Largent earned the nickname Yoda for his almost supernatural ability to catch anything thrown his way. This skill came from an unexpected source: skeet shooting. Largent had learned to focus on the edge of the skeet, and he applied this same principle to football, focusing on the tip of the ball. In an era before receiver gloves became common, his hands were like magnets. His dedication was legendary. One time, Largent missed most of a week's practice due to the birth of his son, who was born with spinal complications. On Friday night, he showed up at the facility asking for the plays he'd missed. In the bitter cold of a November evening, he ran through every single play until he had them mastered. The 1983 season brought significant change when Seattle quarterback and Largent's close friend, Jim Zorn, was benched in favor of Dave Craig. Instead of letting this disrupt his game, Largent adapted and thrived. The Seahawks made their first playoff appearance that year, defeating Denver in the wild-card round before eventually falling to the Raiders in the AFC Championship game. What made Largent's success even more remarkable was that he achieved it as Seattle's only major offensive weapon for much of his career. Defenses knew the ball was coming his way, but they still couldn't stop it. And if you asked some of his peers at the time, his speed might have contributed more than we think.
He didn't have blazing speed.
People don't think he's fast, but he's fast.
Fast or not, it didn't matter. He produced 8 1,000-yard seasons between 1978 and 1986, displaying a consistency that few receivers in the NFL have matched. His durability was as impressive as his production. Despite playing in an era of fierce hitting and, let's call it, minimal receiver protection, Largent missed only 4 games due to injury in his first 13 seasons. By the mid-1980s, he was no longer just a productive receiver, he was rewriting the NFL record books. While his team never reached the Super Bowl, his individual excellence was undeniable, earning him 7 Pro Bowl selections and multiple All-Pro honors. While Largent's consistency defined his career, certain performances stood out. In 1979, he had one of his best games, torching Archie Manning's Saints for 146 yards and 2 scores in a Week 12 display of technical excellence. And of course, in Week 3 of the 1987 season, Largent put together one of the greatest receiving displays in NFL history against the Detroit Lions. In a single afternoon, he hauled in 15 catches for 261 yards and 3 touchdowns, proving that his technical mastery could produce numbers as impressive as any physical specimen in the league. But perhaps his most memorable moment wasn't a catch at all. In 1988, Denver safety Mike Harden delivered a vicious, illegal hit. Despite suffering a concussion and 2 shattered teeth, rather than complain about the cheap shot, Largent waited patiently for his opportunity at payback. 14 weeks, the Seahawks won the game and went on to make the playoffs, while Denver watched from home. This sequence became known as The Hit, or Largent's Revenge, and it's entered NFL lore as one of the greatest plays in history. It showed that the undersized receiver many had dismissed as too small could deliver punishment as well as take it. When asked years later, Largent called it his favorite play of his career. You couldn't really get a story like that now, because the NFL Largent played in bears little resemblance to today's game, particularly at the wide receiver position. In the modern game, elite receivers command near quarterback money, and the position has evolved from complementary piece to cornerstone of modern offenses. The league is flooded with receiver talent, and teams build entire offensive schemes around their passing weapons. There are probably at least 20 players in today's NFL who would have led the league back in the 1970s and 80s. But there's a big caveat: they don't have to deal with the same violence. In Largent's era, receivers could be mauled downfield. Crossing routes and slants meant trading bone-crushing hits for every catch, and the passing game wasn't the focal point it is today. There were no gloves to help secure catches, no rules protecting defenseless receivers, and certainly no 9-figure contracts. This makes Largent's achievements even more impressive. Playing in an era when running the ball dominated offensive philosophy, when receivers were expected to be sidekicks to guys like Walter Payton rather than stars, Largent redefined what was possible. Looking at today's NFL, it's hard to imagine a receiver with Largent's physical profile becoming a superstar. But his legacy isn't just in the record books. It's in proving that technical mastery and relentless preparation could overcome any physical limitations. In his final season in 1989, Largent approached a milestone that no receiver had ever reached. Against the Cincinnati Bengals in December, he made NFL history by becoming the first player to catch 100 touchdown passes. He had 5 catches for 68 yards that day, with the historic touchdown serving as the perfect bookend to a legendary career. It would be his final score in the NFL, a fitting way for football's most precise route runner to cross the century mark. But records, as they say, are meant to be broken. 3 years later, a receiver who had studied Largent's game would surpass him. Jerry Rice, who had idolized Largent's technical mastery and work ethic, broke the touchdown record in 1992 against the Miami Dolphins. Rice would go on to set a new standard that seems untouchable: 197 touchdown receptions, nearly double Largent's mark. The connection between these two legends runs deeper than just numbers. Rice, despite his superior athletic gifts, saw in Largent the blueprint for greatness. The precise routes, the tireless practice habits, the attention to detail. These were the foundations Rice built upon to become the greatest receiver of all time. Even as he broke Largent's records, Rice never forgot who helped pave the way. This mutual respect came full circle in 2004 when Rice joined the Seahawks for his final NFL season. In a gesture that spoke volumes about the relationship between these two icons, Largent agreed to temporarily unretire his number 80 for Rice to wear. It was a passing of the torch, a recognition that while Rice had surpassed the numbers, he had done so by building on Largent's legacy. Rice would catch 3 touchdowns wearing Largent's number that season. After he retired, number 80 returned to its rightful place in the rafters of Seattle Stadium, a testament to the receiver who proved that precision could overcome any physical limitation and whose influence extended far beyond the records he once held. Steve Largent was too small, too slow, and nearly cut before his career began. But the kid who once cried himself to sleep dreaming of a better life transformed himself into the NFL's most precise weapon. Through sheer force of will, he retired as football's all-time leader in catches, yards, and touchdowns, proving that greatness isn't measured in inches or seconds, it's measured in dedication to your craft.